The first time I saw him shirtless, I dropped my phone, my dignity, and maybe a small piece of my soul. The second time he laughed and I knew I was doomed. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I just transferred to Hilford University, desperate to escape my small-town life and start fresh. My plan was simple. Keep my head down, study hard, and maybe if the universe was kind, make a few friends who didn't care that I was different. But the universe has a twisted sense of humor. Because the roommate the housing office assigned me was none other than Ethan Cole, the university's star swimmer, campus heartthrob, and walking definition of temptation wrapped in chlorine and arrogance. The day I moved in, his things were already everywhere. A stack of trophies on the shelf, a pile of damp towels on his bed, and a faint scent of mint shampoo mixed with clean sweat. When I first met him, he was fresh out of practice, hair dripping, shirt clinging to his torso, eyes bright and teasing. "Hey, new guy," he said, flashing a grin that could melt glaciers. "Hope you don't mind a little mess." I minded, but I also couldn't look away. The first few weeks were chaos. Ethan had this maddening habit of walking around shirtless, humming pop songs off-key, and calling me professor because he caught me reading a philosophy book once. "Professor, are you analyzing human behavior again? Or are you just staring at my abs?" He'd tease, stretching his arms lazily as if to make sure I did stare. I pretended to be annoyed. I pretended to not notice the way his smile softened when I rolled my eyes. I pretended a lot of things. At night, when the dorm went quiet, I'd hear him breathing softly across the room, and the sound somehow calmed me. It was stupid, but it felt safe. Until the night everything changed. It was a Thursday, cold, windy, and the kind of night that made campus feel haunted by memories. I'd stayed up late working on an essay when I realized Ethan hadn't come back yet. He usually returned from practice by 10, grumbling about his coach or bragging about his lap time. But that night, midnight came and went. When the door finally creaked open, he stumbled in, soaking wet, shivering, and looking utterly destroyed. His eyes were red, his lips trembling. "Ethan?" I stood, unsure if I should go to him. He didn't answer. He just dropped his duffel bag, sat on the floor, and buried his face in his hands. I knelt beside him. "Hey, what happened?" He took a shaky breath. "Coach benched me. Said I've been distracted lately. Said maybe I'm not focused enough to be team captain anymore." Something twisted in my chest. Ethan, the guy who lived for competition, who smiled through pain, who joked even when exhausted, looked completely broken. Without thinking, I reached out and touched his shoulder. "You're still one of the best swimmers in the state. One bad week doesn't change that." He looked up then, and for a second, the teasing spark in his eyes was gone. What I saw instead was raw vulnerability. "You really think so?" he whispered. I nodded. "Yeah, I do." Then, before I could even process it, he leaned forward and wrapped his arms around me. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was just two people trying to hold the pieces together in the middle of the storm. But something inside me cracked open that night. After that, things shifted between us. Subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. He stopped calling me professor and started saying my name instead, Ryan. He'd linger longer in the kitchen, asking if I wanted coffee. He'd text me during class with dumb jokes. But sometimes, when I didn't reply fast enough, he'd send a quiet "You okay?" And I started to look forward to him. His laughter, his chaos, the way he made the world feel a little less heavy. Still, I tried to keep my walls up. Ethan was straight, or at least, that's what I told myself every time my heart betrayed me. Then came the night of the swim meet. The stands were loud, full of cheers and splashes of blue and white banners. I watched from the bleachers as Ethan stepped up to the starting block, muscles tense, focus razor sharp. When the whistle blew, he sliced into the water like lightning. He won. Of course he did. The crowd roared. But instead of celebrating with his teammates, his eyes searched the stands until they found me. And then he smiled. Just a small one, barely there. But it was enough to set every nerve in my body on fire. Later, back at the dorm, he tossed his medal on the desk and turned to me. "You came." "Of course I did," I said. "I told you I would." He took a step closer, water still clinging to his hair. You always keep your promises, huh? I laughed softly. Someone has to. There was a silence between us, the kind that hums with something dangerous. Then, before I could stop myself, I said, "You were amazing out there." Ethan's eyes darkened, and his voice dropped. "Say that again." "What?" "That I was amazing." I rolled my eyes. "Don't get cocky." But then he moved even closer, so close I could feel the heat of his skin. "You make it hard not to." My heart stuttered. "Ethan," he smiled. But it wasn't his usual teasing grin. It was softer, sadder. "You ever wonder why I mess with you so much, Ryan?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. "Maybe," he whispered. "It's because when I look at you I feel different." The room went silent. The air thickened. And I realized, maybe for the first time, that I wasn't the only one losing sleep over this. That night, neither of us crossed any lines. But from then on, every glance, every word, every accidental touch felt electric. We danced around it for weeks, the feelings, the fear, the what-ifs, until one afternoon, everything finally broke. It was raining hard. Ethan had just gotten back from practice, drenched again, cursing under his breath. He peeled off his hoodie and threw it aside, muttering something about how the pool heater broke. I looked up from my laptop, ready to tease him about his bad luck, but stopped when I saw the way his shirt clung to his skin, translucent from the rain. He caught me staring. "What?" he said, voice low, amused. "Nothing." He smirked. "You're a terrible liar, Professor." And then, before I could think of a comeback, he crossed the room and kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, like something we'd both been holding back for far too long. When he finally pulled away, he whispered, "You drive me insane. You know that?" My voice shook. "Yeah, I think I do." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, the storm finally broke. For a long second, the world was nothing but rain and the sound of our breathing. Ethan's lips were still warm on mine, but his eyes were searching, uncertain, as if he was waiting for me to tell him this was a mistake. I wanted to. God. I wanted to say something, to joke it off, to rewind time before the thunder rolled and my life split in half. But I couldn't, because every part of me was still trembling from the way he'd kissed me, messy, hungry, honest. Like he'd finally stopped pretending to. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "Say something, Ryan." "What do you want me to say?" I whispered. "That you didn't hate it." I swallowed hard. "I didn't." He smiled, small and broken. "Good. Because I really didn't either." And that was it. No big declaration, no dramatic confession. Just two idiots standing in the dark, drenched in rain and confusion, realizing that everything had just changed. The next morning was worse. We didn't talk about it. Not the kiss. Not the way he'd brushed his thumb against my cheek before turning away. Not how I'd barely slept, listening to him breathe across the room. Instead, he acted like nothing happened, humming, stretching, cracking jokes. I tried to do the same, but every glance, every accidental brush of his hand against mine felt like fire. At breakfast, he asked casually, "You got class at 9, right?" "Yeah." "Cool. I'll walk you there." "You don't have to." "I want to." It was the way he said it, not teasing, not playful, just true. And that scared me more than the kiss ever did. As the days passed, the silence between us became something fragile but familiar. We didn't name it. We didn't have to. But little things gave us away. He'd make 2 cups of coffee in the morning, one black for him, one sweet for me. He'd steal my hoodie before practice and claim it was good luck. And sometimes, when he thought I wasn't looking, I'd catch him watching me with this quiet kind of tenderness that made my chest ache. Still, I told myself it couldn't mean anything. Ethan wasn't like me. He dated girls, or at least he used to. But one night, that illusion shattered too. We were at a small off-campus party. A rare night where he convinced me to stop studying and live a little. The place was loud, red Solo cups, bad music, and the sharp smell of beer. I hated it immediately, but Ethan? He thrived in chaos. People swarmed him the moment we walked in. Teammates, girls, laughter. He fit right in. I stayed in a corner, pretending to text, watching him. Then I saw it, a girl, blonde, drunk, leaning too close, whispering something in his ear. Ethan laughed, but his eyes flicked toward me, quick, like a habit he couldn't break. I looked away before he could catch me staring. A few minutes later, he was beside me again, pressing a cold bottle of soda into my hand. "You okay?" "Yeah. Go back to your fan club." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just, you seem busy." He leaned closer. "You jealous?" I scoffed. "Of what?" "Her perfume that smells like regret." Ethan choked out a laugh. Then his smile faded. "You really don't get it, do you?" "Get what?" "That I didn't come here for her. Or anyone else." His voice dropped lower. "I came because you did." I froze. The words hung between us, trembling. Before I could respond, someone bumped into us, spilling beer everywhere. The moment broke. Ethan muttered a curse, grabbed my hand, and pulled me outside into the cool night air. We stood under the porch light, rain beginning to fall again, soft this time, almost gentle. He turned to me. "Ryan, look at me." I did. "Tell me I'm not crazy," he said quietly. "Tell me you didn't feel anything that night." I wanted to lie, to protect myself, but I couldn't. "I did," I admitted. "I've been trying not to, but I did." His jaw tightened, like he was fighting something inside himself. Then stopped trying, and before I could think, he kissed me again. Slower this time, certain. The world disappeared, the rain, the party, the noise, until there was only him. After that, everything blurred. Days felt brighter, nights longer. We didn't label it, but whatever existed between us grew, quietly, fiercely. He'd wait for me outside my classes. I'd bring him snacks after practice. Sometimes, we'd sneak out late and drive to the lake just outside town, windows down, music low, talking about nothing and everything. He told me about the pressure, the scholarships, the expectations, the fear of letting everyone down. I told him about growing up in a place where being myself felt like a sin. Somewhere between laughter and silence, I fell in love with him, completely. But love isn't kind to boys like us. Rumors started. First whispers, then full-blown gossip. "Did you see them together?" "He's spending a lot of time with Ryan lately." "You think Cole's?" "You know?" Ethan tried to ignore it. I pretended it didn't hurt. But one afternoon, after practice, I found him alone in the locker room, fists clenched, staring at his reflection. "Ethan?" He didn't look at me. "They're saying I only got the captain spot because coach likes me, because I'm distracted." "That's not true. They're saying it's you, Ryan." His voice cracked. "That you're my distraction." My stomach dropped. He turned then, eyes full of pain and fury. I told them it was bullshit, but they just laughed. Said every time I mess up a lap, it's because I'm too busy thinking about my roommate. I stepped forward. "Ethan, they're just what? Joking?" He laughed bitterly. "You don't get it. They don't care if it's true or not. They'll ruin me either way." I wanted to tell him it didn't matter, that we could face it together. But when I reached for him, he stepped back. "Maybe we should cool off for a while," he said quietly. Felt like being punched in the chest. "What?" He swallowed. "Just until things calm down." "You mean until they forget about me? That's not fair." "No, Ethan," I said, voice breaking. "What's not fair is pretending like we don't mean anything just because you're scared." He flinched. "You think I'm not scared for a reason? You think I can afford to lose everything I've worked for?" Silence filled the locker room. Cold, echoing, final. I took a shaky breath. Then maybe I was the distraction after all. I left before he could answer. The next few weeks were unbearable. He avoided me. The empty bed across from mine became a ghost I couldn't escape. He'd leave early, come back late. His laughter disappeared. The towels stayed folded. The silence grew heavier. And yet, even through the distance, I could feel him, his absence louder than any words. Sometimes I'd wake in the middle of the night and catch him sitting at his desk, staring at the wall, lost in thought. Neither of us spoke. But the air between us still hummed with everything we weren't saying. Until one night I couldn't take it anymore. It was nearly midnight when I found him on the bleachers by the pool, staring at the still water. His hair was messy, his hoodie pulled tight, his metal glinting faintly under the dim lights. He didn't look up when I approached. "Can't sleep, can't stop thinking," he murmured. "About what?" "You," he said simply. "And how badly I messed this up." My breath caught. He turned to me, eyes red. "I thought if I pushed you away it'd be easier, that I could focus again. But I can't. Everything feels wrong." "Ethan." He laughed softly, bitterly. "You know what's funny? I used to think love made people weak. Turns out it's the only thing keeping me from breaking completely." I sat beside him. "Then don't run from it." He looked at me, really looked, and for the first time in weeks he smiled. A small, real smile. "You still want me? After all that?" I reached for his hand. "Always." He squeezed it gently. "Then I'm done hiding." And when he kissed me under the empty bleachers, quiet, trembling, honest, I knew this time he meant it. The days after that night felt different. Ethan and I stopped hiding, not in big, dramatic ways, but in the quiet, stubborn kind that said, "We're done pretending." He'd still train every morning, still lead the team, still joke around in the locker room, but sometimes, when he walked past me in the cafeteria, he'd brush his fingers against mine, quick and secret, and it was enough. We didn't know anyone explanations anymore. But that didn't mean the world made it easy. The gossip didn't stop overnight. Some teammates refused to make eye contact. Others whispered behind his back, smirking, testing boundaries. And one afternoon it exploded. I was walking past the gym when I heard shouting. Inside, a few of Ethan's teammates stood around him, tense, mocking. "Come on, Cole, just admit it." One of them sneered. "You're banging your little roommate, aren't you?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Watch your mouth." "Oh, relax. We don't care what you do off the clock. Just don't stare at us in the showers. All right?" Laughter. Mean. Cruel. I froze in the doorway, heart pounding. Ethan stepped closer, voice low but dangerous. "Say that again." The guy smirked. "Why? You gonna kiss me too?" Before I could even think, Ethan's fist connected with his jaw. The sound echoed. Chaos followed, shouting, grabbing, the coach's whistle blaring. When the dust settled, Ethan was standing there, breathing hard, blood on his knuckles, and every eye in the room was on him. The coach's voice cut through the silence. "Cole, office, now." That night, he came back to the dorm late, bruised and silent. I didn't ask what happened, I already knew. Instead, I sat on the floor beside him as he stared blankly at the wall. The air smelled like rain and antiseptic. He finally spoke, voice hoarse. "They're suspending me for 2 meets." I closed my eyes. "Ethan, it's fine," he said quickly, shaking his head. "I'll deal with it." "No, it's not fine," I whispered. "You shouldn't have to fight for existing." He looked at me, then really looked, and something inside him cracked. "You know what the worst part is? I'd do it again. I'd hit him again. Because I'm done pretending I don't care about you." My breath caught. "I tried so damn hard to be who they wanted," he continued, voice trembling. "The perfect athlete, the straight guy, the leader. But I can't be that person anymore. Not if it means losing you." He reached out, his hand shaking, and pressed his forehead against mine. "I don't care what they say, Ryan. I don't care what it costs me." For the first time, I believed him completely. After that night, we faced everything together. The gossip, the stares, the half-whispered jokes, they didn't stop, but they started to matter less. Because for every cruel word, there was also quiet support. A teammate who stood up for him, a classmate who smiled our way, a friend who said, "Good for you, man." And little by little, the noise faded into background static. Weeks later came the regional championship. Ethan wasn't supposed to compete. His suspension had technically ended only the day before, but coach had changed his mind at the last minute. "He's earned his place," I overheard him tell the team, "and he's not swimming for approval. He's swimming for himself." The stands were packed that night, banners waving, crowd roaring. I sat near the front, heart pounding. Ethan stood on the deck, muscles tense, eyes sharp. He looked up once right at me and smiled. When the whistle blew, he dove. The pool erupted into chaos splashes. Cheers, the sound of water tearing apart. And for those few seconds, everything else disappeared. He moved like lightning fast, graceful, relentless. When he hit the wall, the buzzer screamed. The scoreboard blinked. First place. The crowd went wild. But Ethan didn't celebrate. He didn't run to his team. He looked for me. And when our eyes met across the chaos, he mouthed, "We did it." That night, the entire team went out to celebrate. But Ethan found me outside, sitting on the bleachers, away from the noise. "You didn't stay inside," he said, sitting beside me. "Didn't want to steal your spotlight." He chuckled. "You're the reason I got it back." I smiled faintly. "You were always going to get it back. You just needed to stop fighting yourself." He looked out at the dark water, his voice softer now. "You ever think about how weird this all is? How we ended up here? Every day." He laughed quietly, then turned toward me. "Do you regret it? Any of it?" I shook my head. "Not for a second." He leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. "Good. Because I think I'm falling in love with you, Professor." The nickname, that stupid, infuriating nickname, hit differently now. I smiled, heart aching and full. "You think?" He grinned. "Okay, fine. I know." Then he kissed me soft this time, almost shy, and the whole world felt right again. Spring came slowly that year. Finals, long nights, quiet mornings. Ethan's hand in mine between classes. Lazy Sundays spent at the lake. There were still moments of doubt, awkward glances from strangers. Whispers that lingered, but they didn't own us anymore. We were building something stronger than fear. One afternoon, as we packed for summer break, Ethan looked up from his suitcase. "Hey," he said suddenly, "you ever think about moving off campus next semester?" I blinked. "Off campus?" He shrugged, pretending to be casual but failing miserably. "Yeah, maybe a small apartment, with good lighting, and a couch, for studying, obviously." I laughed. "For studying, huh?" He grinned. "Mostly." My heart twisted in that perfect, terrifying way love does. "You're serious?" He stepped closer. "Only if you say yes." I stared at him, this ridiculous, infuriating, beautiful boy who'd crashed into my life like a storm and somehow rebuilt it from the wreckage. And I said, quietly but certain, yes. Summer arrived in a haze of sunlight and change. We moved into a tiny apartment near campus, 1 bedroom, 1 kitchen, a balcony barely big enough for 2 chairs. It wasn't much, but it was ours. He'd leave early for swim practice. I'd write by the window, coffee in hand, listening to the faint sounds of the city below. Sometimes he'd come back dripping wet, grin wide, and pull me into his arms before I could protest. "Ethan," I'd groan, "you're soaked. Just sharing the experience." He'd laugh, pressing a kiss to my temple. We learned to exist in quiet, ordinary love, the kind that doesn't need grand gestures to prove it's real. He teased me less now, but every once in a while, he'd glance up from across the room, smirk and say, "You still blush too easily, Professor." And I'd roll my eyes, pretending not to melt every time. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the balcony, Ethan came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "You know," he murmured, "I used to think winning mattered more than anything, but it's not the medals I remember. It's moments like this." I turned in his arms, smiling softly. "You're getting sentimental on me." He grinned. "Don't tell the team." I kissed him slow and easy, and for a moment, the world was nothing but light and warmth and the quiet hum of being exactly where we belonged. Months later, during his first national qualifier, I stood in the crowd again, same pool, different chapter. Ethan stood on the block, focus unshakable, the crowd chanting his name. But this time, he didn't seem nervous. He looked calm. Before the whistle blew, he looked my way, smiled, and tapped his chest twice, a small signal, just for me. Then he dove. He didn't just swim that day, he flew. When he touched the wall, setting a personal record, The stadium erupted. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, teammates cheered. But amid all the noise, he found me in the crowd. No words, just that smile. And I knew. We'd made it. Later, after the chaos, he pulled me aside, metal glinting against his chest. You know, he said, if someone had told me last year that I'd fall for my awkward, book-obsessed roommate, I would have laughed. Thanks, I muttered, pretending to glare. He laughed, then kissed me right there in front of everyone. The world didn't stop. No one gasped. The sky didn't fall. Some people cheered. Some just smiled. And for the first time, I realized we weren't fighting to be accepted anymore. We already were. That night, lying tangled together in our apartment, he whispered, "Do you ever think about what's next?" I brushed my fingers through his hair. "Tomorrow." "No," he said softly. "Us." I smiled into the darkness. "Yeah, every day," he hummed. "Then I guess we just keep choosing each other. Even on the hard days?" "Especially on the hard days." Outside, the city glowed. Inside, our hearts beat in perfect rhythm. And somewhere between laughter and sleep, I realized something simple and true. I hadn't just found a roommate. I'd found home. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.